folks in the back, there is enough seating in the front. Just wondering if you would like to come in the front sides. It's easy to have eye contact and, make this. Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that very much. Please come in the front. It'll be easy for all of us. And nice. (9:30) as per my watch. So let's begin. Good morning, everyone. All right, that's good. Thank you very much for attending this session. As you know, I am filling in for some speaker who could not make it here because of emergency. But I'm more than happy to, do this talk, which is an unplanned talk. But I have delivered this before, so I'm just happy to run with this at runtime. I hope you will find value in this talk. And my planned talk is again at 1 o'clock on Agile metrics, right? So just to introduce myself, I'm Sunil Mundra. I work for ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks is known for adopting Agile even before Agile was born. And I work there as a consultant helping other organizations transition to agility, right? So the topic that we're going to look at is, do we really need an Agile coach? The answer can be in a single one line, but that's not the point. The title is basically to attract you to come and listen to this talk. And what we are going to do as part of this talk is to really explore, what does coaching involve? What does coaching mean? And why is it necessary? What's so typical about Agile adoption and transformation that necessitates or have a need for a coach, right? And we also look at what success criteria means for the coach. Am I speaking too fast for you? Do you want me to slow down? Am I okay? Thank you very much. All right, so let's begin. So there are many companies which are saying, yes, we are adopting Agile, and adopting Agile is a leap of faith, as you can see, because it's a big difference in the way in which people work, right? Some companies are doing it because they genuinely have problems and they want to try this thing out. Others are doing it because some other company is doing it, so we want to do it, right? But companies are saying that we are definitely adopting Agile, and everybody's moving towards in that direction, right? The question is, why do we need a coach, right? And people are saying, oh yes, if you want to do Agile, you need a coach. The question is, people are asking is, why do we need one? So we can say we can get, certifications done. So there's a lot of certifications being offered, and people are saying, oh yeah, if some of our people get the certifications done, they can become a coach. We can learn from books. There's a lot of material available on Agile, and you can learn from that. So there are some people who have maybe worked in previous organizations who say, yeah, we know a little bit about how this thing works, and we can teach the others. They are themselves learners, but they're willing to teach the other people also, right? And it's an avoidable expense because a coach is seen as an overhead. Doesn't matter if it's an internal person or an external person, it's still seen as an overhead. And people say, why do we need this expense? We can avoid this by just not having a coach at all. Right. So the question is, do we really need an Agile coach? Okay. So before we answer that question, let's understand what coaching is all about, right? How many of you here are Agile coaches? Yeah, okay. And how many of you have worked with coaches before? All right, okay. Not too many. All right. So let's try and understand what coaching is. So I'm going to put up a generic definition of coaching, which I found very useful, and I think it applies well to the Agile context. And I'll just read it out loud. Coaching is a process with the goal of maximizing an individual's or group's performance, right? So first is about maximizing performance. Next is about increasing positive results through methodologies, tools, and techniques that are scientifically proven. Now, it's debatable whether agile methodology is scientifically proven, but this definition is generic, so I did keep that word over there, right? But we know that some of the methodologies are definitely proven. Whether they are scientific or not, that's a separate question, right? Applied by a trained professional who is the coach, very important, partnering with the client or the coachee. Okay? So I think this definition really captures the essence of what an agile coach does. Yeah? Let's look at some sarcastic definition of an agile coach. All right? Nowadays, the entrance criteria to become an agile coach is whether you can facilitate a retrospective in few different ways and are able to find your way through some agile tracking tool. Right? Oh yes, if you can pretend to listen while nodding your head every so often and saying, I hear you, what do you think you should do now? Then that's a bonus. Right? So the coaches, they don't have solutions. They're asking, their coaches what you should do, and they will capture that and present it back, right? No, so this is not what coaching is all about, right? This is, these kind of people are giving coaching a bad name, and definitely that's a sarcastic view, and we should stay away from it, right? So let's look at, in my view, what are the dimensions of agile coaching? And why I am saying this is because somebody needs to fill this role. Whether it's an external person or whether it's an internal person, it does not matter, right? But somebody needs to fill this role, and let's look at this. First, that person should be an agile SME. SME means subject matter expert, okay? Which means that the person has to have good knowledge of agile and lean techniques. They need to have a good understanding of the principles and values of agility, right? They need to have a good understanding of, the origins of agility and how that applies. The second, and that one is not given a lot of importance, is change agent, right? So agility, as we all know, involves a big change. It's a disruptive change, and that change is painful for a lot of people, right? And this change part has to be handled also very carefully, because a lot of insecurities come up in people's mind. What is my new role? What's going to happen? How do I work? And my individual performance appraisal is gone. It's now team. How do I get appraised? So there is a bunch of questions which come in people's minds when change is happening and when people are moving to agile. So this role has to handle that bit as well in terms of managing the change, right? The third is about mentoring. Why mentoring? Because you need to create internal champions who can take this forward after the coach's role is over, right? And this is especially true if you are an external coach, because you are not going to be there forever. You need to get out of there. And even if you are an internal coach, you cannot cover the entire organization. You need champions to be able to do that, right? How do you create those champions, is very important. Therefore, that mentoring role is critical, right? The next one is about leadership, because it requires somebody who is experienced to show the path, to the teams who are adopting this, and therefore leadership becomes very important. And consulting is important, and what I mean by consulting is that you bring in your past experience for use over here, right? We know that Agile is a framework, and what you apply into your context is very dependent on the drivers which you have for adopting Agile, and the needs that you have and the pain areas that you have. So to understand that and to apply the right practices at the right maturity levels, right? That needs, some experience. And that's what I mean by consulting is, prior experience. So to me, these are different dimensions of coaching, which, that role needs to fulfill. So what's so special about an agile coach, right? Why is this role important, and what makes it so important in an environment where agile needs, to be adopted? So as I said, first is about being able to give context-sensitive advice, right? So this is not a role where you can just read from something and just spell it out. This is not a methodology which is binary. If yes, take this path. If no, take that path. It does not work that way, right? There are a lot of gray areas, and there are a lot of maturity levels that you have. So given that, this person needs to provide advice which is context specific. For example, some organizations might be struggling with the major problem being quality, right? Now, if you have a quality issues, you need to be able to provide advice on the engineering practices side as well as from the process side, right? But if you have time to market as the driver, and that's your main concern, then the process bit becomes more important. Requirements management, thin slicing of requirements becomes even more important. So which practices do you introduce first? Which practices do you introduce later? And how do you mature them towards meeting your goals? And that advice has to be based on understanding the company's context, right? So this person has to get into the organization, or if they are part of an existing organization, understand the team's context and provide advice based on that. Okay, so that's a unique aspect of a coach's role in an agile environment. The next is the coach has to be able to challenge status quo. We all like status quo. Change, as I said, is painful for human beings, right? Even if we know when the change is good for us, we still resist change, right? It's hard. And this coach has to come and say, why are we doing this? Can we do this better? And that's not easy, right? To challenge status quo, because a lot of people say, oh, we have been doing this for many years and this is how we will continue to be. But if you have that kind of a mindset, then you are not going to be able to make much progress or have much success with agile adoption, right? So this person has to really come in and challenge the status quo, and challenge not in a bad way, but in a way in which the team is convinced that it is helping them, right? So that's kind of important. The next is about encouraging diversity of thought. So the thing to remember here is that Agile takes away focus from individuals to the team. Agree? Right? The team is the most important unit in an Agile organization. And why is that, right? Because there is power of collective thinking, right? And when you think collectively, so if there are, say, 10 people in a team and you need to make a decision, and there are 10 people and 3 people have presented 3 different alternatives, for that decision, right? The team discusses and deliberates on that and makes a decision considering the pros and cons of all 3 alternatives. If they do that, right, that decision is going to be much less riskier and more robust as compared to some manager making that decision sitting somewhere far from the team, right? And that is the power of collective thinking, of thinking by the team and the team coming to a decision. And why that is important is because the team is closest to the ground, right? The team knows the situation best on the ground, not some manager who is sitting somewhere far away. Therefore, it is important for the coach to encourage bringing diversity of thought, because only when you have different thoughts, you can make a better decision, right? That's why, and we are not used to this. In a traditional environment, we are only used to our managers telling us, do this. So we are not even supposed to generally think. It's the manager who makes the decision. We are, on the people on the ground are just supposed to execute that. That culture has to change in Agile when you're adopting Agile. And therefore, the coach's role in terms of encouraging diversity of thought becomes very important. And diversity of thought, again, has a challenge. So there will be some senior members who will say, oh, because I am senior, whatever I say should be true. Right? No, not really. Even if there is a fresh graduate in the team, if that person is an adult, and I'm sure by the time you get working, you are an adult. And if that person has passed your company's interview process to make it into the company, that person has, demonstrated some level of intelligence and maturity to be as part of your company, right? So even if there is some fresh guy on the team or a person on the team, that person can bring in a fresh perspective and challenge the senior person. And I don't mean, again, challenge in a bad way or being in a disrespectful way, but put in a different point of view. And that senior person has to be open-minded enough to say, yeah, maybe you're right. I didn't think about this. So this kind of thinking and encouraging this culture is an extremely important role which a coach has to play. Okay? This is so important, right? Because courage to tell the truth. And courage to tell the truth not only to the team, but more importantly to the senior management, right? Because it's very hard for people. Sometimes you work in an environment where you are not able to yourself see the problems. You need some other perspective, some other third person to come in and tell you what it's like. But at the same time, people don't like to hear bad things, right? But the point is, if you don't want to hear about it, if you don't want to acknowledge it, how will you fix it? So the coach's role is really to have the courage to bring the problems out in the open, not indulge in a blame game. It's very easy to say, oh, that person screwed up, or that person is bad, therefore we are having a problem. Not really. Most problems are systemic in nature. Or even if there are people problems, how can that coach depersonalize, people's issue? For example, if I say, oh, my manager is a lousy guy, right? I mean, he's incompetent. If I go and tell the coach like this, the coach cannot go and say, Sunil said this about his manager. The coach will have to go somehow identify this problem and validate it through different sources and go and tell the management, look, I have heard this on the ground that this person may be having a problem and I have validated this. There may be some skill issue here. I think we need to train this manager. So it's about not only telling the truth, but telling the truth in a way in which it can be palatable and can be digested, right? So the example which I like to give is like you want to take a bitter medicine. You are having some problem, medical problem, and you have to take a medicine which tastes very bad. What you do with that? Your objective is not to make the person taste the bad taste, right? Your objective is that the medicine has to go in the stomach and start working. What you do, without diluting the bitterness, you just make it sweet enough so that it goes down. And it starts working. That is a coach's role, is how you can just add that little bit of sweetener to that bitter message, bitter truth, so that it becomes palatable for the senior management. And even for the teams, right? So again, this is a very, very important part of coaching, and especially in Agile coaching, is how do you maintain the balance between advising and discovery? What I have seen from my experience is it's not always the team, the coach telling the team, do this, you will be successful. If you do this, you will fail. It does not work like that sometimes. Sometimes the team has to fail a little bit to understand that it does not work. Okay? Let me give you an example of a small child. Okay? Now, how many of you have children here? All right, there's a few people. Okay, so you probably can relate better to what I'm saying, but I'm sure others can also. Say there's a 2-year-old child, and the 2-year-old child is playing with a matchstick. You absolutely cannot allow that, because that can cause a disaster, right? I mean, it can burn the child, it can burn the house, it can burn anything, just one matchstick. So there are some things where you just cannot allow, the child to experiment with. But if the child is insisting on touching a hot oven or a hot plate, and every time you stop, the child said, no, but I still want to touch it, right? What you will do maybe once is say to the child, go ahead and touch it, right? And once the child touches it and realizes it's hot, maybe they'll get a little burn, and that's not good, right? But still, it is not life-threatening or damaging. So once the child touches the hot plate or the hot oven, next time for the rest of the life, the child will not touch it till he grows up, right? So that is sometimes the role which a coach needs to play, is sometimes the coach needs to let the team fail a little bit to understand that it does not work, or there's a new way that needs to be tried to work. And sometimes, the coach needs to give an advice based on context and say, stay away from this, don't do this, do this, right? How do you maintain that balance? When do you decide that the team can fail a little bit to come up? And when do you decide that this is the path the team cannot take, right? And advise accordingly. See, the other thing is about discovery is that the appetite for change sometimes comes only when you fail. Only when you fail, you realize, we need to change now. You know, if somebody comes and tell you, oh, I have seen this work in other organization, you should try this. Sometimes it doesn't go down well with us. Sometimes we have to learn through mistakes. And that's what the coach sometimes needs to allow the team to make, is make mistakes and learn. Yeah? This is a hard one, right? I mean, as I said, Agile is not about a technology or a binary approach of yes, no, flowchart, path-driven thing, right? Agile has a set of practices, but more importantly, it is a mindset. I have seen organizations which have said, we are doing stand-ups, we are doing retrospectives, we write user stories, okay, we do release planning meetings, but the end result is zero. They have not seen any benefit at all. And the single most important reason for that is, while they are doing the practices, they have not made the mindset change, yeah, in order to become Agile. So Agile, people treat it like a noun. People do Agile. Agile is not a thing to do, it is a thing to be, right? It's a state in which you can be and you can continue to grow in that state. So Agile is an adjective, it's not a noun, and that is because it's more a mindset. So sometimes you may not do even a practice, but if you have the right mindset to collaborate with the customer, to see how you can deliver maximum value, right? To make the best possible decision in, with the team. If you have those values, then practices are just meant to help you, become Agile. So a mindset change is absolutely a must in order to derive benefits of agility. And this, takes time. It's not so easy because you have to demonstrate it, you have to show that it works, and then people start changing their minds about things. And again, it's not about mindset change only at the team level. Senior managements also need to change their mind, right? How do senior management give up control and recognize that they need to move from a manager command and control role to a servant leadership role, right? How do middle managers come to terms that they are not managers anymore, but they are just facilitators, and the team is now managing themselves and self-organizing? So there is mindset change needed at every level in the organization, and this person's role is to be able to work with stakeholders across all levels to make that mind shift change. Yeah? Do people understand what herding cats means? Or should I explain? All right. So herding cats, so if you have like 5 cats, try and bring them together, right? It's hard. They will all try to run away in different directions, right? This is what herding cats is about. And why do I say this? It's important in an Agile world because there are different people with different visions of where the organization needs to be, how do we adopt Agile and things like that. The coach has to ensure that everybody is together on this, right? We can't have too many disconnects and people running on parallel tracks or on different tracks and taking this Agile adoption initiative in different directions. So how do you make sure that all stakeholders are on board with what's happening, with the priorities, with the adoption plan, and then take it forward? So again, the coach has to work with multiple stakeholders here. There could be process-related people, there could be quality-related people, there's senior management, sometimes there is an external consultant, there's a team, and everybody can have their own interest as to how this thing needs to move forward, okay? But it is the coach's role to make sure that everybody is on the same page and everybody is moving in one direction, which is agreed, yeah? This actually is true for any coach's role, but trust, is so important. One, we all know that trust is so important when you work as a team. Because as I said, agility is moving away from individuals to a team. So creating that environment of trust within the team where team members trust each other, regardless of seniority, juniorness, whatever it is, right? That is number one. The second is creating trust with people. Because some people will not share in an official meeting what is on their mind. Okay? They can only share it off the record and with the person they trust. So a coach, in order to be effective, in order to really understand what's happening in people's minds, need to be able to have people come and talk to him or her freely. And as I said again, you maintain trust by depersonalizing that issue and raising it appropriately without naming the person who came and told you about it, right? So creating that environment of trust so that people can open up formally, informally, and that's where you really get the true information. And sometimes, you can get wrong information also, but the point is at least somebody has the courage to come and talk to you. You can validate that to see whether that is true or not, but the person coming and talking provides an important data point for the coach to investigate. And therefore, creating that trust is very important, not only within the team, but at individual level as well. This is unsaid, but I have seen situations where consultants or coaches come in and they want to demonstrate their superiority. So they will put some complex procedure, right? And that's how they demonstrate value. Actually, if you understand the 12 principles of agility, keeping things simple, simplicity is one of the core values of agility, right? How do you keep things simple? How do you get things going without complicating them? And I think that's a skill, because it's very easy, in my view, to complicate things. It's actually hard to keep things simple. Agree? Right. Again, this is something which I have learned from my experience, is you have to know when to stay away from something. So folks who are taking pictures of this, I'm going to put this deck on SlideShare, okay? And you can freely access it from there. But of course, I'm not stopping you from taking pictures. Please do. But I also want to tell you that this deck will be available over the net. I will put it on SlideShare so that you can access this, right? So know when to stay away. What do I mean by that? There could be many reasons why you want to stay away. One is it is not your area of expertise, right? So for example, I am a people, process, organization, transformation, leadership development type of coach. I am not a technical expert. So if you ask me to coach on test-driven development or automation testing or building a continuous integration server, that's not my area of expertise. And I need to call that out and say, hey, I can't do this. Get somebody else who can do this, and I'm happy to pair with that person. Number one. Number two, there may not be an appetite for change. So if you try to push change when there is no appetite, it's a problem. So it's like food, okay? If you don't feel hungry, you don't have the appetite for food, and you try to eat something, what happens? You will puke, right? That's exactly what happens with change as well when it is pushed. And there is no appetite. There is no desire to make that change happen. So a consultant needs to know in which areas the team is willing to change and which areas the team is not yet ready for a change, not yet. And the coach has to focus on creating that appetite for change and not push things. Because if you push without appetite, it's going to come out. The third, not everything can be done at one time, right? You cannot chew one apple fully at one time. You have to take small bites. Same thing when you're doing, agile coaching or consulting. You have to prioritize what you start first, what you bring in next, and what you bring in next. Okay? It's very, very important. So if I were to describe my coaching experience and my style, right, I give the analogy of salt. So my motto is be like salt. What do I mean by that? First, salt is useless by itself. You cannot do much with it. You cannot just eat salt, right? It has to be added to something to make it useful, some food. So, which means that, a coach or a consultant has to be able to work with a team, work with a set of people. By himself or herself, the coach is useless. Second, if you add very little salt, food is not tasty. You'll just not like it. More important, if you add too much salt to something, you can't eat it. The same applies for advice and what the coach does. Too little, not good. Too much, very bad. More importantly, You cannot add salt to dessert or a sweet dish. Yeah, you need to stay away, from doing that. So that is the kind of, judgment which the coach needs to have to say, when do I need to stay away? Is it because I don't have the expertise? Is it because this is not important right now to do? Or is it because there is no appetite for change? Whatever that reason might be, you may want to stay away from certain areas at a point in time. So, does that bring out, the complexity which is involved, in that role? And do you think, somebody needs to play that role? Yes? Now let's see. What does success criteria mean for this role? What does this role need to accomplish? Okay? So I mentioned this briefly in the mentoring bit when we spoke of coaching dimensions, right? The coach has to groom torch bearers. Torch bearers are internal champions who are passionate about taking this thing forward. So you need to actually work with people on the ground, with senior management, with team members to identify who these people are and get their buy-in and start mentoring them and groom them. So if a coach has groomed torch bearers, then I would say that coach is successful. But if the coach has not groomed torch bearers, like, oh, I know everything, if I go away, everything will collapse. That's a very bad coaching model, right? You may have a short-term win. You may actually, there may be a commercial interest so that you think that, oh, if you make yourself indispensable, the company will keep you for a long period. But it does not work that way, because this agile adoption initiative will not sustain unless you create champions or unless you have an army of people who can take this forward. My philosophy towards coaching is this. It's like teaching a child to ride a bicycle. Yeah? You never ride that bike. You hold the child, you make the child sit on the bike, and you run with the bicycle, holding it. At some point, you just let go. But you don't walk away from there. You're still there. If the child is falling down, you hold it. But once you see that the child is able to ride the bike on his or her own, you just walk away. So the coach's goal really is to create these internal champions, pass on that knowledge, show them how this coaching, mentoring, thing works so that they can take it forward, show them the best practices in agility and how they can be applied in that context, and just walk away from there. Yeah? So finally, the coach also has to deliver results, right? And what this means is that when you go there, you establish a current state, benchmark it, right? Baseline it, actually, and decide with the management what is the target state that needs to be. So, as I said, every agile practice, every agile principle, every single agile value has varying maturity levels. And you may not want to go to the highest maturity level given the cost benefit part of it. For example, if it's continuous integration, right, or continuous deployment, Yahoo and Flickr deploy, fixes into production 30, 40 times a day. Now, in a banking environment, that may not be needed, right? So where do you stop? You define the target state and you ensure that you're getting the organization or the team towards that target state. It's very important. Because if you don't, you do all the practices, as I said, but if you're not reaching towards the target state, then what is the use of adopting agility? So a coach's success needs to be judged from the fact that they have agreed and defined on the target state with all the concerned stakeholders in the company, and they are making progress towards that or have actually achieved that target state. This is very important. This is one of the key tenets of agility, is to have a team which is self-organizing. And this requires a huge cultural change, not only within the team, but the people who manage the team as well before this change happens, right? So if a coach is able to create a self-organizing team, which means that the team trusts each other, the team is cross-functional in nature, the team is mature enough to, make some of the decisions which they need to make, and discuss that out and make the right choice, then that coach, I would say, is a successful coach, right? One of the key problems which we have with the traditional way of working is that we have a task orientation. How do you get not only the team but the senior management to move from task to value orientation? This, again, is one of the most difficult things which I have found as a coach to do is do this, because it involves a mind shift change, right? Task orientation means, oh, I have done my development work. Now it is the tester's job. I don't care what happens next. To saying, we are all in this together until we deliver working software to our customer. We need to do whatever we need to do to make sure that it happens, right? So how do we get over that throw it over the wall mindset to say, I am into this end to end, right till the end, regardless of my role? That kind of mind shift change needs to happen. Secondly, for middle and senior managers, people are used to measuring teams or individuals based on task completion, right? How do we move away from that and move to a different way of measuring things? I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my next talk, which is at 1 o'clock, about metrics. But again, this is very important. So we have so many companies which are trying to adopt Agile, but which still appraise the tester by number of defects he or she finds in the development process, right? That's task orientation. That's not value orientation at all. Who's a better tester? Somebody who collaborates with the developer to ensure that there are no defects, or somebody who says, I want the developer to check in because then only I can find the defects, right? So how do you move away from that kind of mindset to a mindset where it's all about delivering value to the customer? Whatever we do in between must be, towards that goal. This aspect of agility, continuous improvement, is not given as much importance, but I think this is really the key, because this is the only way teams will continue to excel. Okay? If the team is in a position where they can themselves begin to spot anti-patterns, if there is something wrong, they themselves begin to call it out and fix it themselves, or take help in terms of fixing it, then that is the culture which is going to help the team sustain the Agile adoption and become excellent going forward. So again, this is not easy, because very often teams will say, yes, we are now become Agile, so this is how we will be. No change, and this is how we will continue. Unless the team has the mindset of saying, how can we improve even further? And that's a tough mindset to bring in. But if the coach is able to do that, then I would say, the coach is successful. So let's come back to the question. Do we really need an Agile coach when we are doing Agile adoption? What's the answer? You know what my answer is going to be, right? It's a resounding yes, right? Now, when I say this, I want to call it out again. I don't mean somebody who's an external person, right? It can be somebody who's from the organization. Suppose there is a big company and you have had an Agile adoption happened in some other division of the company, right? Somebody from that division also can come in here. But what I wanted to emphasize is the coaching role has a unique value proposition in this adoption process. And when we looked at what the coach needs to do and what the coach needs to achieve, I don't think you can just leave it to the team or the middle managers or the senior managers to be able to achieve that. You need this specialist role to be able to do it. And why I'm saying this, if I have to pick one reason why I'm saying this, it is because Agile is very easy to understand. All right? I mean, what is it? It's mostly common sense, right? People say Agile is common sense. No big deal. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So easy to understand. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Very easy. Team should do continuous improvement. Team should be full of motivated individuals. There's nothing complex about it. But what happens is when you try to adopt it to your context is when people struggle a lot. And therefore, even though Agile is easy to understand, it's difficult to implement. And it's difficult to implement in a context. The reason is because it's a framework. It's just a set of broad guidelines. How you adopt it to your context is left up to you or somebody who's guiding you in order to do that. Yeah. With this, I conclude my talk. Thank you. Questions, please. I think we have enough time for questions. Yes, please. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Let me just come closer. Obstacles in coaching.
Yeah, when you implement the Agile.
Okay.
And how can you succeed it?
All right. So the first obstacle is, as I said, seeing that this is a different way of doing things, right? The team themselves moving away from the inertia. So I am used to being a developer. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to the tester. I don't want to talk to the BA. I'm used to getting a 200-page requirement document or a design document, and I have to work on that. So changing your way of working to make it more collaborative. That's the first challenge. Again, here, the important thing is because the team is used to a command and control atmosphere, you're used to your manager telling you what to do, and you will do only that. But if you challenge the team saying, it's your decision now. You are the decision maker. You decide what is best. And therefore, giving that autonomy, that freedom to the team, is very important, and the team starts liking that. So once the team gets used to the freedom and the autonomy and the space that they have, they will start liking it. Second is, people are not trusting this because they say, yeah, but waterfall has worked, or I'm not sure if this is going to work in my company's environment because my company is very hierarchical, very process-oriented. How will this work? Yeah? What you need to do is start small. Start very small. Start with only one team or part of an organization. Work with the senior management to remove all the obstacles which this team has. Make it a success. Once you have a little bit of success with this methodology in the organization, it creates that appetite. Others want to be a part of it. And it creates that buzz. That's the second major challenge which I face. But as I said, the way around it is to create a success story. The third part is mind shift change across all levels, as I spoke. First, the leaders, right? They are used to passing things down, not letting things come up. So we see this is how it's to be done. How do you change that mind shift to say your role is now changing from being, a director or somebody who's in command control position to now being a servant leader? More importantly, this is very true for middle managers because they don't know what their role is. If the team is making all the decisions, what is their role? How do you transition, right? How do you transition roles even at the team level? So a quality analyst or a tester is always used to being separated from a developer. I mean, I have seen companies where testers are put on the separate floor because people say they should not be biased by what the developers are thinking. Oh, come on. Yeah, it's like an exam paper which the tester has. Yeah, oh, you've done the code. Now I'm going to give it an exam. Let's see how many defects I can find. Is that the point? So role changes need to happen. So a tester in an agile world needs to start involving right from the story writing stage when you write the acceptance criteria and collaboration with the business analyst. So how do you bring in this role change even within the existing roles? That's the third challenge. So if I were to list these top 3 challenges, these are it. But again, the point is, as I said, the third challenge, if you can demonstrate success, if you can make sure how people enjoy working with each other, create that environment of trust, and you give the feeling to the team that they will enjoy much more working with the customer, then they will be slowly willing to change themselves. I hope this answers your question. Thanks. Anybody else? Yes.
For some cases, we
Yes.
What would be your suggestion on startup, like the team where maybe someone who know more about Agile may not certify as Agile coach, but that person has to build a team to change mindset and become more Agile. What would be your
Yeah.
suggestion from your experience?
Sure. So if I understood your question, what you're saying is there's a team and for whatever reason you're not able to bring in a coach. What you're asking is how can perhaps a senior member of the team play that role, right? That's what you're asking, right? So yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that. But as I said, if you look at the different dimensions of coaching, which I showed you, right? It's not just about being senior in the team and knowing the context of the team. Yes, definitely that helps a lot. But sometimes that becomes a little bit of a problem, right? Because the team members, they will listen to that person because that person is senior or that because that person is a manager or whatever it is, right? So ideally, I would say that if that is the case, put that person in another team or get somebody from some other team, a senior person, to play that role. I would not advise somebody from an existing team to play the coaching role. It does not work. People have biases, people have mental models. Okay, you think this person is in the team is bad, right? So you're probably not going to change your mind. But if you get in a third person, so you can swap. For example, if two teams are going agile, take two senior people from the teams and swap their roles and put them into new teams, put them into an agile coaching camp. If there is coaching happening in other parts of the organization, let them shadow those coaches, learn something from that and do it. But just doing a certification and putting them into a coaching role, I think it's not fair. It will not work. But I would say within the constraints that you have, it's best that somebody from outside the team who's senior enough comes in and then works with the team. Yeah, that's my suggestion. Thanks. Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other experiences which you want to share?
Maybe one question from me. So
Yes, please.
let's say if we have a team which is completely waterfall and we want to transition this into be more agile.
Yes.
So what would be the first step that we should take?
Look, I think the first step that you need to take is really understand why you need to change. Yeah. So identify what's hurting you. Which area is hurting, right? Is it quality? Is it efficiency? Is it time to market? Is it that you are discovering suddenly so many surprises that you're always late in delivering something? Is it because the business is not happy? What is it, right? And once you identify that pain area, for example, if the pain area is, business is saying, we give the requirement and then we don't hear anything until maybe 6 months to a year, and then something comes out, and in the meantime, business has changed, and even if they deliver something, it doesn't work for us, right? So there is an issue at that point in time with collaboration with the business and working at every step with the business closely together. If it's a quality issue, what is the cause of the quality, right? For instance, quality is usually a symptom of something gone wrong deeper. Is it your coding practices which is wrong, right? Is it that your expectations with your business is not clear and they are not involved in defining the acceptance criteria? What is it? So I think it's really important as a first step to understand what are the drivers for you to change from your existing methodology to Agile. Address that and introduce practices appropriately. Yeah? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anybody else? Any other? Yes, please, go ahead.
You have shared several success criteria, like grooming towards barriers and mindset change and others.
Sure.
From your previous experience, when it's success, do they come together, or it depends?
What do you mean by do they come together? Please, can you elaborate a little bit?
For example, in your previous experience, for one coaching that very successful,
Mm-hmm.
do meets all those criteria?
Yes.
All of them?
Yeah.
When it's not very successful, do you miss one of them, or none of them?
Yeah, well, I think I understand your question. What you're saying is, do success all criteria happen at the same time, or one happens after the other, or how does it all work, right? So, really, I mean, there is no... the standard consulting answer to that is it depends. but it depends. It depends really on the pace of adoption. It depends really on the appetite for change which the organization has. And sometimes some criteria become successful faster than others, right? For example, in some organizations, for example, latest organization where I worked in South Africa, it's a big bank, right? I'm just coming back from there on an engagement. What that leader did was it allowed the people to fail, the teams to fail, which means that the appetite for change was very good over there. And therefore, there were many people who were wanting to become internal torchbearers and champions, yeah? And mindset change was much easier. So that's what I said. It depends on the appetite for change. It depends on, how much it is hurting you right now, so you want to change. But I would say, and you cannot predict which one will happen first, which one will happen later. But if you have to answer your question, if you have to achieve all those 4 or 5 criterias, in my experience, at an organization level, and an organization, I'm talking of an organization of say 500,000 people, large company, it takes anywhere between 5 to 7 years. Yeah, for a true transformation to happen across the organization. So you may see these criteria happening to some more large extent at a team level, but if you have to make it happen across the organization, that's the kind of timeline that we are talking about. Yeah? All right.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, please.
Actually, I'm not a programmer. I'm working in human resource department.
Yes.
In your view, what do you think that HR can do to support the agile transformation?
Okay.
Organization?
Very good question. Very good question. All right. I think, many organizations make the mistake that Agile is only for the delivery team or the development team or the IT department. Actually, a true transformation involves all aspects of the organization, right? So I think for HR, it is important to understand how this thing works differently as compared to traditional way of working. First, it's not about the individual, but about the team, right? So it's not your manager who is going to do your performance appraisal there. It is the team who is going to do a 360-degree appraisal. Your HR department needs to be supporting that. Your manager's view is just one view. So suppose you have 10 team members. Your manager's view is just one among those 10. It doesn't have extra weightage just because that person is a manager. Every team member has equal weightage, right? Second is change in roles. What does it mean for the team? What kind of upskilling do you need? What happens in many IT organizations is we are very good technocrats, but we have sometimes our engineering colleges, and this is true in many Asian countries, including India, is where they don't teach you all these communication skills and collaboration skills at all. You are just supposed to learn some technology, you go to the technology, it's fine. But the point is, Agile involves working in a very collaborative way. How do you bring in that culture? How do you, when you recruit people with that mindset of collaboration, and not somebody who says, leave me alone, I'm just going to work alone. If that is the mindset, it's not going to work, right? The third bit is about really upskilling people. Okay, how do you orient people to this new way of doing things? Training programs, not only for people on the ground, but including middle and senior management as well. So those are the kind of issues from an HR perspective. One is role change, second is performance appraisal, third is training. I think these are the three key areas which I would have HR to begin to look into. But really, it's important for the HR to understand that this is a new way of working. And if you have a checklist-driven process that you have to do this because it is CMMI or ISO 9000 and you have to do this, it's not going to work. But I think the key challenge is for you to move away from individual manager doing appraisals to a team doing it. And again, a team doing appraisal not only once a year, but how do you bring in a culture of continuous feedback? That's very important. For example, I'll share you what happens in ThoughtWorks, right? So in ThoughtWorks, there are only 3 types of people, if you categorize from a performance point of view. First, people who are not performing, for whatever reason, right? Either it's an attitude problem, which is much less actually, but mostly it's a skills issue, or the person is just not able to cope up with the new way of things and their mindset is not like that, or whatever it is. What we do is we take that person out immediately. We don't wait for the performance appraisal time to identify that. See, Agile, there is one beauty of Agile. There is no place to hide. So if something is not working, if some person is not good, if somebody is not performing, you will know it immediately. Immediately. Right? And therefore, it is important to observe that, take that person out of the system, put that person in another team. Maybe it's not working with this team, but try with another team. Is it a skill issue? Is it an attitude issue? Is it a mindset issue? What is it? You need to identify that and work on that. Now you are left with only 2 types of people. First, who are meeting expectations, and second, who are doing some outstanding work and who are exceeding expectations. Right? And it is the HR's job. If you ask somebody, oh, are you outstanding? Everybody's going to say, I'm outstanding. Yeah, you can't do that. You have to talk to the team members to understand, oh, who within your team you think, has done more than what is expected. And they will tell you. And therefore, there's only two types of people. And then for those who are outstanding, you give them a little bit extra raise. But all the others who have met expectations, they are not rated on a number. So it's not about, oh, I got 3.5, you got 3.7. No, not really. It's not important. We have all met expectations. And there's a small group which has exceeded expectations. People get a standard increment or a salary rise for those generally who are, met expectations. Yes, there are sometimes corrections that need to be done based on markets and, based on role and things like that. All those happen. But generally, a performance appraisal is indirectly tied to salary increase. And I think we need to look at that, because what agility says is you need intrinsic motivation. As an HR person, you probably know that extrinsic motivation does not work in a knowledge-driven industry. Actually, there are studies which are done which show that if you put monetary incentive on a knowledge-driven work, for example, I am a BA, and you say, oh, you write better requirements, I'll pay you a little bit more. If you do that, actually performance goes down. Where monetary incentives work is when you have a factory kind of a process, or where you can increase your output just by working yourself and doing repetitive things. Okay. So this is something which HR also needs to understand, right? Is how do you bring in intrinsic motivation? If somebody is interested in read, watch Daniel Pink's YouTube video on motivation. He talks about 3 things which motivate people. Autonomy. Freedom, which means I have a right to decide, what we do. I have a say in it. It's not that I have the only right to decide. The team basically decides, but my view is important and my view is heard. First, mastery. Second, which means that I want to be good at this and I want to get better at this. It's very important. And the third is purpose. How am I contributing to the success of my organization, to the success of my customer? Okay? These 3 things motivate people intrinsically. It's not that money is not important. Money is very important. Yes, we all know. And we all need money, right? We need money for our daily living. We need money to educate our children. We need money because we want to buy a house. We need money to just go on a holiday maybe once or twice a year. We need money for retirement. We all need money. But we need to get enough money to take it off the table. That should not be your primary criteria for motivation. Everybody needs to get reasonably well paid based on their skills, years of experience, whatever it is. But that should not be the primary motivator, because it does not work in a knowledge-driven industry. Does that answer your question, ma'am? All right. Do we have some time? I think it's up time. Maybe one more question if somebody has, or... Yes, go ahead.
I see many posts for implementing the HR.
You many what?
Pros and cons.
Pros, okay.
I would like to hear the cons of implementing the HR.
It's not about Agile having a con. It's like saying, does common sense have any cons? Right? It does not. So Agile is a way of thinking, and it gives you certain tools, certain practices. Okay. Now, if you are given a hammer to hammer a nail, but you hammer it on your head, it's going to hurt, right? So that's the way, really, that it's a set of practices which are given for you to become better at something, to deliver more value to business. The only con that I see is in implementing agility, but with the intent and what it is meant to do and how it is helping businesses change themselves, both IT and business working together, I don't think there is anything wrong with the intent. It's just the problems are with the implementation. Right? And the key problem, as I said, is about people just doing it blindly without understanding why it is being done and changing the mindset. That's the big issue that I see with agility, and therefore it gets a bad name. The other thing, what happens with agility is that it brings out problems out in the open very quickly. Okay, because there's nothing to hide. It's not a big bang that you know the problem only at the end. You know the problem right there. As I said, there is no place to hide. What people think, oh, because we introduced Agile, we are getting all these problems. No. Those problems are coming up faster because you introduced Agile, which gives you a chance to fix them before it is too late. Right? And so where I have seen Agile get blamed is incorrect application, right? applying Agile without mindset change and not getting benefits to say, hey, Agile doesn't work for us. Or, when problems come up and people say, because we adopted Agile, we are getting these problems, which is good in a way. But people don't recognize that. Yeah. Thank you very, very much for making it interactive and asking these questions. I've enjoyed, making this presentation to you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Actually, I would like to be a representative of this room to give you like a small souvenir for all of us. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And next thing, when you leave your room, they have a feedback form, feedback, and like the left side, so you can give a feedback of this.
My sincere
Yeah.
request to all of you, please put in feedback, whether you liked it, you didn't like it. If there's any way I could have improved on this, please let me know. In the true spirit of agility, I'm speaking of feedback. Yeah?
Okay. And then you're going to get a break and come back later around, I think, 11. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.